Hi. So I have a really interesting topic for today. Learning about lucid dreaming. That's what we're working on right now. And one of the things about lucid dreaming that prevents us from going deeper into our ability to lucid dream is fear. And specifically, it's about the fears of dreams, right? So the things that we're going to encounter in our dreams that are fearful. And many times nightmares. I mean, what would it be like? Let's take a minute here and imagine something that possibly we haven't imagined before. But what would it be like to become lucidly aware in a nightmare? Just ponder that thought. What would it be like to become lucidly aware in a dream? And what I mean by lucid, just in case you're not familiar with the term, is in a lucid dream, you become conscious inside the dream state. So it's similar to the feeling that you have while you're awake, where like I can look around the room. So let's do this for a second. Let's practice what lucidity would look like in a dream state. So right now, look around the space that you're in and notice that if people come in and interact with you, bring you delicious coffee, you're aware that that's happening. I could reject the coffee. I'll definitely be drinking this in a second. Now I want you to think about what that would imply in your dream. So if you can take a recent dream you remembered, and unless you were lucid in it, most likely it feels like participating maybe in a film that you're watching, right? A regular dream is more like being in an interactive movie where the story is going and you might actually be a part of the story. For example, as an actor, one common nightmare actresses or actors have is being thrown on stage at the last minute unprepared into a production that they've never done and never been a part of. In fact, it is such a common theme among actors that there is a play called The Actor's Nightmare where that's the exact experience. And so now, when we are in these kinds of dreams, it feels like the dream is driving us. Like people are talking to us, we're interacting with it, we have to make decisions, but it feels like we are reacting to the dream. When we become lucidly aware in a dream, we get to make choices, and to some extent, we get to manipulate what's happening to us. So we can, let's say we're in a space, I'm going to pick a field. We're in a field, right? Or we're next to a tree. And maybe in a regular dream, we would have to interact with just that. We wouldn't be able to turn around and see what's behind us or notice what's going over there unless the dream directs us in that direction. In a lucid dream, you might notice that there's a tree here and you might feel a pull to interact with the tree, but then you also turn your head and you notice that there's a small village down the hill. And you might decide that that's where you would rather take your attention. So you get more control inside a lucid dream state. So that's just like a quick wrap up of the idea of being lucid in a dream. Now, let's take that scenario and put it in terms of a nightmare. The thought of becoming consciously aware in a nightmare. How many people, give me a thumbs up if that thought scares the crap out of you. Now, what if I told you that by becoming consciously aware inside a nightmare, and we're going to go into nightmares and why it's a bad idea to avoid them, that maybe, just maybe, you would have more control over what's going on and actually get past the scary part. All right, so this is the power of consciousness in a dream state, is actually getting underneath what that initial scary, threatening situation might feel like. So the reason why I suggest that it's a bad idea to avoid nightmares. So here's what happens. We experience a nightmare, and the first thing that happens is our fight or flight instinct actually does kick on. So we experience adrenaline in our dreams, right? So, and because we're experiencing it, that might actually provide enough adrenaline to wake us up right out of the dream state. Now, here's what happens here. So let's say we're in a nightmare, the adrenaline gets kicked on, and we're woken out of the dream state. Usually, our next response is to try and shut that shit out, right? Just turn it off. I don't want to think about it. I don't want to relive that moment. You know, when we do that, we're actually doing ourselves quite a disservice. And here's why. Nightmares serve an incredibly powerful purpose in our lives. We all have to deal with fear, and we all have different fears, right? It's very unique to our makeup, and our fear, you know, it's not something we're ever going to be able to totally dismantle. Fear is a necessary part of the human mechanism, and you know, it serves as a form of protection. The problem most people have is we have yet to really go in and understand how this is actually helpful for us. Most of the time we take fear at face value and we're like, fuck, that's scary, let's get out of here, or I don't want to face that, or I'm afraid that I will, you know, this could kill me. And that's really what happens with fear, right? Is that we get this sense that it's somehow going to destroy us. When we use nightmares as an opportunity to learn about fear, we get to work on some of the deepest parts of ourselves while we are asleep, meaning we actually get to experience personal growth and development on a spiritual level while sleeping. And here's the bonus of that. When you work on it there, it gets worked on in your waking reality. You have an option. I mean, you really do. So the option is you can definitely work on it in waking reality. And I'm certainly not implying that just working on your nightmares will prevent you from having to do any, you know, shadow work or personal growth work in waking reality. But what it does is it speeds up the process. It deepens you on your spiritual journey. It deepens you on your emotional development journey. When we have a nightmare, we're actually being taught about parts of ourselves, usually what we're afraid of, but what we're afraid of also points at what we are destined to do. So one of the things I really want people to start to understand is that fear and destiny are deeply intertwined. And fear is the language, right, of our shadow self. And we can learn how to become fear translators in our life. But in order to become a fear translator, you actually have to engage with fear. Just like if you wanted to be able to translate for another language, you would have to learn to engage with the native language, right? You wouldn't be able to just translate without having interacted with it at all. You are doing something called taking the power back. Now, I want to pull out a 1980s reference for you that is the most awesome reference. It's a Bowie-related reference. At the end of the movie Labyrinth, right? So the big phrase that sets her free of her nightmare is saying to her nightmare form, "You have no power over me." And boom, the nightmare is broken into pieces. We have this same ability, meaning that if we're willing to stay in the nightmare space and announce that we are no longer letting this fear rule us, we actually pull the power back. So here's a couple ways to do that. And one personal one that I use and have developed and used for a long time. It's fairly simple. It sounds simple, and it's a little bit more complicated to perform. But if you find yourself in a nightmare and you are woken up by it, you can choose to immediately go back to sleep with the intention that you're going back into that dream and you're going to change the outcome. So, and this works. This actually does work. It takes a lot of will. It takes a lot of decision making on our part. You might be, as you go back into the dream, confronted with the very images that took you out. But if you stay strong and remember that you're the dreamer, you're the source of the power, you can actually go into the dream and change the outcome. But let's say that we've had a nightmare where we're just like, there's no way in hell you are getting me to go back there. And I totally get that. I've had those, and I know exactly what that's like. It's like, oh, no way am I going to go back into that space and try to work with whatever energy was there. So a way to do that would be to replay the dream in your head while awake. So this is more like visioning. You would go into a vision space and you would imagine the sequence of the dream. Let it take you all the way up to the point where you felt like you lost control. All right, so you take it all the way to the point where you feel like you've lost some control, and then you rewrite the dream, right? You're changing it consciously. Now, of course, you're not in your dream state, but that doesn't matter because it's all being absorbed by the greater you, the greater awareness that's there. So you're taking it right up to the point where you felt your power go, and you change the outcome, right? Maybe you get your power back. Maybe you zap the being. Maybe maybe you twist the scenario, or you save the day. However it works for you, rewrite that story and visually take yourself through it. And then finally, there's no more useful a tool than having a dream journal. Writing down the thing that you're afraid of. Even if you don't know how to analyze it, that's something I've taught people in the dream work module. But let's say you don't know about dream analysis. Even just writing it down and putting it aside and looking at it at a later day can give you so much insight about what that was about. Because it's never about the scary images or the menacing people or the circumstances that we think it's about. There is a translation that needs to take place, and sometimes that buffer of time, right, getting emotionally detached from the experience allows us the clarity and insight to go in and figure out exactly what that dream was telling us. And then I'm going to do later talks about how fear and destiny are related, but getting to know fear in the first place is the first step to really understanding how your fear is telling you about your destiny. How many people are feeling like sucked dry a little bit like a sponge right now that's been kind of wrung tight, and you're just kind of in that state of like, oof, I've been used up. You might not be the super powerhouse of energy that you normally are. Some dark thoughts, heavy stuff, nightmare energy, like I was talking about before, is coming up because there was deep internal cleaning, shifting, and changing. So just like a detox, these things purge and bubble up. So the things that were deeply held inside of us, locked in our subconscious, if you will, are bubbling up and kind of burping out, if you will, into our waking reality. So just be gentle with yourself. Recognize your power will fully restore, and that these things that are burping up into your life, they are simply detox symptoms. They are not reflective of the person you are. So if you're having bad moods, if you're having heavy thoughts, if you're having self-doubt, if you're feeling wrung out and worn out, that's not who you are. That's just the symptoms of deep internal shifting. You're not alone. And I got your back energetically, and a lot of other people are experiencing this too. So just give yourself more love and more patience at this time. All right, love you. Bye.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe now and hit the notification bell so that you know the next time I release a new video. Until then, stay magical.